During the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial, I had no doubt that Amber Heard was telling the truth and did 2 very detailed videos about why I thought this. And of course, I got a lot of pushback from both videos. I got slandered and accused of being an abuser myself just for speaking on what I believe to be true. A lot of the comments I received showed a great lack of awareness when it came to the reality of abuse and were very repetitive in nature. So I wanted to do a video to address these comments and also discuss some new updates regarding that trial that were put forward in the newest Netflix documentary called Depp versus Heard. So let's start with the comments. First, a lot of people had an issue with me saying that her hitting him was possibly a sign of reactive abuse. Check it out.
One person said, if it was reactive abuse, she would tell him, I respond like that to protect myself, or because you also treat me like this. Her telling him, why do you avoid fights? You are such a baby. Grow up. It was a hit, not a punch. Ha ha ha. Is the exact opposite. If she defended herself or reacted with violence, she would try to put the blame on Depp for initiating it all. To which I respond by saying, reactive abuse doesn't quite work like that. Not all reactive abuse happens as a direct, immediate result of someone else's abuse. Reactive abuse can occur days, weeks, months later, and can even occur when the abuser's abusive behavior isn't displayed. Studies have shown that women who have been abused for some time can even initiate physical assault in anticipation of the abuser's abuse. In those cases, it wouldn't be seen by the abuser or the victim as self-defense. If that was the case with Heard, she wouldn't really have been able to understand for herself what was happening, let alone articulate it in any clear way. So in this case, she is not likely going to say, I'm doing this to protect myself. But this is essentially what she would be doing if she was being reactively abusive. Also, their conversations are crazy making, largely due to Depp and his style of communication, or should I say, non-communication. It would have been hard for her to keep track of the conversation or her thoughts, let alone say something as clear-cut as that, even if she did understand it. That kind of communication, when you're dealing with someone like that, takes a sense of awareness, self-control, focus, practice, and skill, which most victims don't have whilst in the abusive relationship.
Along with all of this, the other reason why I believe that this was most likely the case was because she admitted doing so, whereas Johnny admitted absolutely nothing and takes on the mute challenge or completely changes the subject whenever his physical violence is referred to on a recording. To me, this is a clear indication of guilt, or at the very least that something isn't quite right. Then when the UK trial, in which he was found guilty of multiple acts of emotional, physical and sexual abuse, that trial was dismissed by the public for being corrupt and biased, whilst the US trial was being praised for being more fair and more informed, despite the fact that the UK is one of the most legally informed countries when it comes to domestic violence. So much so that it has actually made some more subtle forms of emotional abuse and manipulation, such as coercive control, illegal. Now, this might not seem like much, but coercive control is a major feature in any dangerous or violent domestically abusive situation, and something that to this day hasn't been made illegal in any state of America. So if we're questioning which trial was more informed, it doesn't take a genius. The US trial was also praised for not allowing a lot of evidence that was submitted in the UK trial, as Johnny fans and the courts considered this stuff to be irrelevant. This is a very significant point, to which I will circle back to later in this video. Another commenter said this:
I understand your take on it when you look at how it normally goes with the victims and if you don't watch everything. If you watch everything, I'm sure you will look at the case differently, especially the audio in Australia where you hear her after cutting his finger off and you hear her with their doctor, nurse, and security. They talk about her going crazy and wanting someone that can calm her down on the plane to get her away. It wasn't on the trial because a security guard on that died before the trial. They talk about the medicine she normally gets to calm her down and a lot more. My blood really boils watching this video because it is so wrong. To which I responded by saying, yeah, I heard the tape in Australia, and you don't actually hear her say that she cut his finger off in Australia. These reframes on what happened based on what you think you're hearing is part of the problem. It's manipulation. Not you manipulating, but the information being put forward in order to manipulate. And if you watch this is where I shared the link to the first video I did on Johnny and Amber. You can hear him say on tape that he cut it off himself, yet the world somehow managed to ignore that entirely. Interesting. And what does her going crazy prove? If someone cuts off their finger in front of you, you might go crazy too. You hear her saying something along the lines of, I didn't mean it. It's quite likely that he blamed her for why he did it, like abusers do, and what you're hearing is her taking responsibility for something he did, like victims do. Now, if you're reading this and thinking what I'm saying is highly unlikely, I want to point out that there is another audio where he is threatening to hurt himself and also blaming Amber for it. So this scenario is actually quite likely. But if you go to the link, you can literally hear him say the words, literally admitting that he cut his own finger off. Yet nobody wanted to hear it. Why? Because they put out a sensationalized video full of implications where nothing concrete was actually said. Interesting. But here I go, arguing the case again.
So many times I've witnessed Johnny's team carefully editing or misrepresenting context to make it seem one way when it really was another, all of which I'd already documented in my other video, so I knew it wasn't below their moral code to do so. And without an in-depth knowledge of emotional abuse and how they twist your brain and make you feel as though you're responsible for everything, it is easy to get your everyday person on board because they're not gonna be able to even consider the possibility that what he was doing was actually the hoax. After that recording was put out, everybody started saying how they heard her admit to cutting off his finger, but nobody actually heard her say those words at all. So in that way, as manipulation goes, it was 10 to Johnny and 0 to Amber. In my second video, heard the verdict and some major red flags of abuse. I even went as far as to say that the US trial, Johnny and his team were extremely unethical when it came to this trial and their dealings with Amber Heard. To which I had people accusing me of being an abuser, calling me a fraud, and telling me that I'm not an expert and they've been through it. To which I had to explain that victims are not experts in abuse. They're experts at their experience of abuse. It's not the same thing. And whilst they have that experience, there's a lot there that typically isn't understood, even in their own experience. And just because a person has had that experience doesn't close the door to someone else having another experience. And that's something you understand when you have both been there and studied, to which I have, which is why I consider myself an expert. Which brings me to the more updated information about the trial provided in the latest Netflix documentary, Depp versus Heard. First off, we now know Depp went out of his way to have the court proceedings in Virginia.
Johnny Depp has one of the most brilliant legal teams, and if you need proof of that, I've got a word for you. Virginia. Why would two celebrities from California arguing about something written in the Washington Post file a case in Virginia? In the USA, defamation laws vary state by state, and Virginia has some of the best defamation laws for a matter like this.
Just so we're all on the same page, this is not a divorce case. This is not a domestic violence case. I would argue it's a PR campaign disguised as a defamation case.
There's no Amber Heard fans. It's only Johnny Depp fans. Nobody's there for Amber.
Have such crazy access into the Fairfax County Courthouse. In Virginia, that decision is solely up to the judge, and the judge in this case
signed an order permitting a pool camera to broadcast the trial.
I think this was done to A, gain the greatest advantage legally when it came to the case of defamation, and B, to gain an advantage from his fan base there and isolate Amber, who had no fan base and no support.
So I think that making it accessible to the public was a strategy, I think probably brought to the table by Johnny's team.
Depp was the one who wanted the cameras in the courtroom.
Oh, really?
She didn't. I was against cameras in the courtroom, and I went on record with that and had argued against it because of the sensitive nature of this. But it made it a zoo.
He's won already in the court of opinion. Whatever this jury comes out to, he's won. And he needed the court process to extract evidence and statements from Amber. And
then he used his fan base and his advantage to manipulate the court of public opinion.
Yeah. Social media now, influencers, you study this for a living. I don't have to tell you, they make money sometimes for posting content. How is that playing into this particular moment?
Become a member.
You have creators on platforms like YouTube who previously were getting hundreds of views on videos about anything. All of a sudden, they're pumping out videos about this trial, videos that make Johnny Depp look good and make Amber Heard look bad because those are the only ones that people want to see. And they're being able to make money for the first time ever. They're getting viral videos off of this case, getting millions of views.
You know, you keep saying it's glorifying Johnny Depp, but that is the dominant stream, right?
Oh, yes.
It's not the other way.
Up until recently, you really couldn't find any TikToks in support of Amber Heard. Wow. The entire platform was pro Johnny Depp. And I've heard from those creators themselves that if someone comments and says that they have a neutral position or they think that maybe Amber is a victim, they immediately get dogpiled, harassed, abused themselves in these comment sections, and no one wants to speak up in support of Amber Heard.
So not only did she not have any physical support, she had no online support either. Another thing, a lot of people kept accusing me of not watching the trial and stating that they had watched the whole thing, so they know that Amber Heard was lying. To which I would always respond by pointing out that you can watch the whole trial and still not see the truth if you don't know what you're looking for. And pointing out that their view was only based on what had been actively shown to them.
The thing is about justice is that it's not about the truth. It's not about right or wrong. Unfortunately, it's about what the judge or jury believes, and on the information that's presented. And that's why trials are theater. It's supposed to be the search for the truth, but it's really about us orchestrating what witnesses we're going to bring in, the order of proof that we're going to present this story, and how we're going to do it, what we're going to keep in, what we're going to keep out.
Her testimony of being assaulted on the plane being a perfect example of that.
To what extent were you able to see Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard?
I was able to see them very clearly.
Wasn't Mr. Depp saying pretty horrible things to Ms. Heard?
I don't recall that.
I, at some point in this, get up. I walk away from him. My back is turned to him, and I feel this boot in my back.
To what extent, if any, did you observe Mr. Depp or Ms. Heard hit, kick, or throw anything at each other on the plane?
No, I don't recall that at all.
He continued to drink and then eventually started howling like an animal.
Mr. White, did you see Mr. Depp go to the back of the plane and pass out and moan loudly?
I don't recall that.
You don't recall that either?
No.
So here, even though at least some of what she said was supported by audio recording, to which we can at least confirm that he was very drunk, this guy didn't see or notice anything, but was there the whole time. How strange.
And take a look at what happens when Amber's team tries to introduce evidence to support her claims.
Here's what happened when Amber Heard's defense attorney tried to show texts from Depp's assistant to the jury.
Can you pull up Exhibit 229, please? Based on Mr. Depp's testimony, I'd move for the admission of Exhibit 229.
Your Honor, can we please approach?
Sure.
Some people are saying in the chat, the Deuter's text, if that's what we're about to see, they're not going to look good for Johnny. Came up in the UK trial as well, about something about kicking Amber.
They didn't get that Deuter stuff in.
Okay.
After that sidebar, attorney Ben Rottenborn moves on, and those texts stay out of evidence.
But then when Johnny Depp fans got hold of the sealed documents thinking that they were going to get more dirt on Amber, check out what they found.
There were texts from Johnny Depp's assistant, Stephen Deuters, to Amber Heard, quote, if someone was truly honest with him about how bad it really was, he would be appalled. I'm sad he does not have a better way to really know the severity of his actions yesterday. Unfortunately for me, I remember them in full detail, everything that happened. He was appalled. When I told him he kicked you, he cried. Why was these text messages not introduced? I mean, this felt very pivotal for Amber Heard's case.
The court ruled on those that they're irrelevant to the case at hand of defamation.
Depp supporters have been unliking Depp's victory post over the weekend. The discovery of the unlikes has come after the unsealing of pre-trial documents that the judge ruled not relevant to the case.
So despite Johnny denying that he has ever hit Amber Heard, his friends denying ever seeing this take place, the evidence from the unsealed documents confirmed that he has in fact assaulted her at least that one time. And okay, some people are still holding strong to the fact that Johnny Depp is completely innocent, arguing that the texts that were found in the sealed documents were doctored to support Amber Heard's lie. But I want you to take a moment to use your brain here and think about what is most likely to be true. Johnny Depp did nothing and Amber Heard got these text messages doctored, and nobody on the plane witnessed him being drunk or acting a fool at all, even though we have documented audio recordings, or he actually did assault her. And everyone was covering for him because they didn't want to lose their job, they didn't want to lose their career, they didn't want to be slandered, bullied, and publicly exiled, which is most likely. Now, if you go with the latter, but then you also want to say that, you know, Johnny Depp was no angel and they were just as bad as each other, I'm not going to allow you to do that either. No, because Amber Heard said what it was. Johnny, however, knowing that he did this, got on the stand and lied under oath and got all of his employees to do the same. Johnny, knowing that he did what he did and actually assaulted her, also used his fan base to bully her, humiliate her, and not only destroy her career, but also destroyed her status as a victim of domestic violence and an activist against it. Johnny, knowing that he did what he did, took her to court in an area where she had no fan base and no support, and manipulated the court system, as many toxic narcissists and abusers do, so as they appear as the victim, and the victim appears as the aggressor. Dalvo. I did a whole bit on that in my other video about this, so go back and check it out. Now, with that in mind, what are the chances that a man that would go out of his way to do all of that, knowing that he did actually assault her at least once, what are the chances that he also sexually assaulted her? Just like she said too. Because let's not forget, Johnny did all of this screaming victim stuff whilst all the time knowing that he actually did what she said he did, at least physically, at least once.
And we already know that this is never just once and it often escalates, which was supported by the bruises she showed and was accused by the public of faking.
That's what I wanted to share with you guys today. Let me know what you think about what I've said here in the comment section, but let's please keep it respectful, no personal attacks. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell so you get a notification every time I upload a new video. And until the next time, live boldly, live empowered, live from the inside out. Bye for now.